showtime. Come on. Let's do this. Welcome to the One Up Weekly Live Sega. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Today we're going to be talking about Sega and the new announcement that came out about their Astro City Mini. Let's get right to it, right, Ralph?
Let's go. We got a lot to talk about in a short period of time.
No time, right? Because we both have to get back to work in like 9 minutes, right? So this is pretty exciting. You know, there's this Astro City miniature cabinet that they're going to be releasing. The prices are still a little bit fuzzy, but what's interesting about it is, you know, Sega made a lot of arcade titles, and this is supposed to be packed with 36, hopefully 36 arcade titles, and they've actually released which ones are there. Ralph, you want to take over? You want to talk about this while I put my guitar away?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about this thing is, first of all, my first impression was that, oh wow, it's a Japanese inspired, Sega item, which is pretty interesting because we all know that these Astro City cabinets, they're not necessarily like in a lot of American arcades. If they are there, they were imported there. So I thought that was kind of a unique take, but the other cool thing is they're talking about arcade micro switches and arcade controls. So it seems like they're doing and like 2 stereo speakers and everything, so the basis of the idea is really stinking cool. And you pointed this out, Justin, but it's arcade titles.
That's right.
That's why, so it's really
think about earlier, we did cover that Sega was coming out with that Game Gear. You know, of course, that was, Game Gear Micro, and that was going to be some Game Gear games. This gives you the little bit of variety, right? And the titles that are on it are from some different Sega arcade systems that we're going to cover in a little bit. But another exciting thing, people have mentioned it in the chat, is that they claim to have micro switches on these joysticks. So, and then if you look very closely in the picture here, it's going to have 2 speakers. So you're going to have stereo speakers at the top. And this is actually a style of cabinet that we've covered earlier before. Remember, we were talking about the iArcade cabinet, and that's going to be like a tabletop cabinet, and it's kind of going for that Japanese vibe. This is similar, and this is not something that we're familiar with in the U.S., but the titles are things that, that we are familiar with, and I'm hoping, even if it's only a Japanese release, I'm hoping those titles will continue to grow, be titles that that we're interested in. You want to go through the list, Ralph?
And we're gonna speculate a little bit on that. So I put together this little document. So this is the list of the titles, but let's go through this document I put together only because I take it and I compare the title to the system it was released on, so the arcade hardware, because this is where we can get into some fun speculation as to what they might do. So let's take Alien Syndrome, Alien Storm, Golden Axe, Altered Beast, and Fantasy Zone. If we scroll over, the arcade system that was based on is System 16/System 18. You scroll over a little bit more, we can see that most of these releases had console ports outside of the first one, which now I can't remember because I can't see it on the screen.
Yeah,
the first
the
one,
Alien Syndrome.
Alien Syndrome didn't have a console port, but everything else had a console port. The last game in that title had only an EMEA and APJ release. I can't remember the title either because I can't see it because I made a gigantic sheet. Fantasy Zone. So Alien Syndrome, no console port, and Fantasy Zone was only available. It did show up later on in like those Sega Ages things and stuff. I can't keep track of all of them. But as far as arcade releases, this was all Sega 16. If we scroll over more all the way to the right, on that top section, I'll tell you a little bit about the Sega 16 arcade hardware. So the reason why this was interesting is this served as the basis for the Sega Genesis. So this hardware was very similar to the Sega Genesis, if not close to identical to the Sega Genesis. So it's interesting, right? Not that impressive to be able to support those games on any modern hardware. But as you go down...
So what you're saying is we take a look at these, let's see, it's 5 games here. It's like, well, this is the same quality as the original Sega Genesis thereabout, or even a little bit earlier, right?
Yeah, so nothing crazy there, really.
Nothing crazy, but what's cool is it does get crazy as we go along, and that's hopefully where the speculation is going. I'm not really sure where you're going, Ralph, but let's do this. So, System 32, right?
Yeah, so you got System 32, which that, obviously, we've got Golden Axe Death Adder. That's never had a release outside of the arcade, outside of the upcoming Arcade 1-Up cabinet, so that's exciting. Dark Edge, I don't think ever was released on any platform, so if you scroll over a little bit, so that was an arcade-only release. So both of these kind of interesting because they're both arcade-only releases, and the first time we were actually going to see Death Adder is Arcade 1-Up. So if you scroll over a little bit, Justin, you'll see past the console ports. This system's interesting because this system was Sega's first 32-bit system. So it was their first arcade board that was considered 32-bit. So now we're getting up there in a little bit more powerful, a little bit more difficult to emulate. And the other cool thing is to have another title we've never seen outside of the arcade. That's exciting, right? That's something to be excited about.
All right, Ralph, we're doing pretty good. We got 4 minutes to go. Let's keep it going. So Virtua Fighter.
Where it gets better is Virtua Fighter. We've got that worked on the Model 1 hardware. Now, if you scroll over a little bit, Virtua Fighter we know was out on Saturn and 32X. I had it on 32X, but we'll talk about that in another episode. If we scroll over long, a little bit more, this was their first 3D game system. That's right. So capable of 180,000 polygons per second and 60 frames per second. So this is where we're getting into a little bit more of the advanced arcade hardware, right? The first time we're seeing like this many 3D polygons on the screen at the same time, groundbreaking type stuff.
So now I'm getting exciting. I'm like, whoa, they're throwing that on this tiny little thing? I mean, think about the Neo Geo. Does it have any polygon games that are powerful like that? Or definitely not this? Okay, we're going to move on, right?
Yeah, so Zohar's feeling me right now. We're not there yet, buddy, but he's feeling me. He's saying Naomi maybe. Okay,
so we got 3 minutes. Let's go.
All right, so now I'm going into speculation mode.
Yep.
Do they put any of the Sega STV games? That was
so everything we're showing here is like potential arcade systems. It's kind of like, well, if they can run all the way up to that, could they run something like this, right?
Yeah, so I'm speculating, right? STV hardware is the Saturn hardware. There's a couple of titles I really like. There's a ton of them, so don't crucify me on this. I love Batman Forever. Die Hard Arcade was awesome. Final Fight Revenge was unique. It's like a fighting game based on Final Fight. But if you scroll over, the interesting thing about the STV hardware is, so by the way, these games did have console ports. So scroll just a tiny bit to the left. Sorry, Justin, it's really hard because I'm not controlling it. Sega Saturn, PlayStation 2. So you're seeing like a theme, right? That kind of era of gaming. And this is all based on the Sega Saturn architecture. I actually had one of these arcade boards. Instead of the games being on discs, they're on cartridges. And yeah, it's basically essentially the same hardware. So that was our first bit of speculation. Do they do any of the STV stuff? Now, where it could get even cooler is do they incorporate any of the Model 2 stuff? Now, I made a note about Model 2. It's interesting. STV, I think, came after Model 2, but Model 2 was more powerful. So it's kind of weird. STV almost is like a step back if you look at them graphically, because if you look at Dynamite Cop, it's freaking amazing looking. So there's Dynamite Cop, there's Virtua Fighter 2, and if you scroll over, a lot of these games, and Daytona USA, although I don't think they'd put that on a console
now we're getting
like
into
this.
We're
getting into the Saturn,
PlayStation
the
2.
Dreamcast, PlayStation 2. And if you scroll over a little bit more, you'll see there's this is upping the game, right? We went from 180,000 polygons per second to 300,000, 60 frames per second. Crazy good hardware.
That's right.
But now where I'm wondering is, would they be ballsy enough? Would they have, and there's a ton of titles, is the Naomi hardware, which is basically the Dreamcast. Could they choose, an STV title? Could they choose a Model 2 title like Virtua Fighter 2? And might they maybe throw in some Naomi games? I don't know, but these games can be emulated on things like a Pi 4, so you could do it potentially, depending on what kind of hardware they do.
That's right. So and we'll see you on the next one.
No, not yet.
We hit 10 minutes. Oh, we're dead.
All right.
We're dead. The game's over. Time's up.
I guess that's it.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
The next one.
Bye.